So good morning, everyone. Welcome into CPT 168. This is section WS3. And we meet on Wednesdays right here on the old Zoom channel at 9:35. And looking forward to working on Python with you guys. Big crowd, 20 of us in this class. We have 4 sections of CPT 168. I have 72 students this semester. So either everybody's heard what a great class this is, or man, everybody hit this at the same time. I don't know. We had about 36 students last semester, which was our first semester for the course. And out of those 36, I want to say 30 or 32, somewhere along there, finished the course. There were only a few people that dropped out. So that's a good thing. And most everybody did pretty well in the course. So we want to keep that tradition up. It's a very busy course. And the first thing I want to do this morning is kind of go through the orientation with you, tell you what to expect. You all found your way here on Zoom, and that's a good thing. Other than John, nobody's cut on your cameras, and maybe that's because it's so early in the morning and you hadn't, shaved yet or whatever you do to prep in the morning. But if you want to cut on your cameras, that's good. It helps me learn who you guys are when I can see your faces. It takes a little longer when we're just doing it by names, but something about the way your brain works. When you can see somebody's face, you can learn the name faster associated. Like Tori there, she was in my class maybe a year ago now, Tori, and sat on the back row. See, I can tell you everything. I remember her coming to class, the whole thing.
It feels longer than a year, but I guess it really has only been a year.
It might have been a year and a half. I don't know. It's a while back.
Yeah, I'm not good at keeping up with time anymore.
Let's see. Thurston family just logged in, and I need to know who that person is. So their audio is still connecting. So Thurston family, would you rename yourself with your name that is in the grade book here, your Blackboard name? Just right click in the top of your square. There's 3 little dots. There's a menu there, and one of the options is rename. If you want to rename yourself with your first and last name like the other folks in the class, that'll be a big help to me. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share out my monitor here in just a second. Problem is I don't have a Thurston on my class roll, so I need to know who that person is. Can I hear from Thurston family? Okay.
My name is Thurston Scott.
Thurston Scott. Okay. Would you the top right-hand corner of your square there on the screen, click on those 3 buttons, those 3 little dots, and rename your name so we can all learn your name.
I am actually.
Yeah, you'll see it up there. It's just right up at just hover your mouse on the top right-hand corner of the square there, and you see the 3 little dots. Click on that.
I'm actually on my phone.
Okay, well, I'll rename you I'll do it for you. Okay. Now that you have told me, but next week do that for me, okay?
Okay, I will.
Always use your real name. Scott is your last name. Okay, I was about to make it your first name. Okay, got that taken care of. I'll go ahead and share out my screen now and get started with today's festivities. Let's make a couple of adjustments here. There we go. I forgot to check that. Okay. So right now you should be seeing my screen and the slides that we are going to be reviewing with you. So welcome into our class. Like I said, we have 4 sections. A little bit about Zoom. I don't know if you had Zoom class last semester or not, but the college has just added Zoom to our arsenal of tools. Last semester, I bought my own Zoom account because I like Zoom a whole lot more than Collaborate as far as stability and bandwidth and functionality and all. So now the college has given all the teachers a Zoom account, and I don't know what's going to happen in your other classes. Teachers will eventually gravitate to Zoom from Collaborate. Collaborate's going away at the end of the semester. So I don't know if you have noticed that or not yet, but that's going on this semester. Who knows how long we're going to have to teach this way. Trying to get a vaccination is a real trick. I won't go into all of that, but effective today, those of us that are over 70 years old can make appointments in South Carolina to start vaccinations for this virus. And so hopefully my wife is working on that downstairs. That was her job today, to get us an appointment. So we'll see what happens. As far as the Zoom protocol in the class, it's pretty simple. You guys log in with your microphones muted, just to kind of keep it quiet. And you certainly open it up if you want to say something. That's when you're not talking, you should have your microphones muted. And everyone is invited to turn on your cameras. Unlike with Collaborate had very limited bandwidth, and we were constantly fighting that battle. We don't have that problem with Zoom. So if everybody in the class cut on their camera, we should have no problem. I've actually done that in other classes and no problems at all. So if you want to do that, that's good. Certainly it's not required. I don't want it to stifle anybody's participation in the class. Our classes are going to be recorded this semester. I'll post them on my website. Yesterday, I created folders on my website for each of the 4 classes. It's a bit repetitive. Okay, well, there's 3 Zoom classes, so 3 folders. It's a bit repetitive doing it that way, but each class has a little different twist to it. So I went ahead and did it that way. So you'll see your section number WS3 up there when you go in, if you want to look at any of the videos to refresh anything or I don't know, review something before a test, whatever. So in the attachment 1 for your syllabus, you have most of this information. It is required that we give you guys on day 1 our contact information, and I certainly don't mind doing that. A couple of things that are unique this semester, because I am working from home. It's best to use my cell phone number, which is on the screen right now. If you use my cell phone, chances are I probably won't answer it because there's so much spam going on. So please leave me a voicemail, or you can text me. Identify yourself, tell me your name and the class you're in, so that I have a point of reference, and then I can get back in contact with you. If I know you're going to call, if we have an appointment, I'll certainly pick up, but otherwise I might not. I'm just being honest. As far as my office phone number, that's over at school, and all you're going to get there is voicemail, and I check that voicemail about once a week. So that's really a non-factor this semester. Please don't call that number. It's just not going to work real good. As far as email addresses to contact me, the best way to do it is use my GTC Gmail account, which is the first email here. And I'm monitoring that all day long from when I get up to when I go to bed at night. I will do my best to answer you as quickly as I can. You can use the gvltec.edu, the second address there. That's the main address, but that does not go to my screen as easily here in my office. So I monitor that. I hit it about once or twice a day to check my email. So it's certainly best to use the GTC Gmail address to get in touch with me. And good old Bo at bosanders.org, which is my own personal spot on the internet. I monitor that all day long too, so you can use that one anytime you want to. So as far as my office hours are concerned, I'm going to try to have my appointments on Mondays and Thursdays this semester, because I have 2 classes on Tuesday and 2 classes on Wednesday, and my Thursday class is a night class. So it's best for me to meet with people on Mondays and Thursdays if you want, and maybe Fridays up to about 1 o'clock if you want to set up an appointment during the semester. So we can meet on Zoom, or we can have a telephone conversation.
All Unit 1 and Unit 2 assignments. Wow.
What'd you say, Mr. Todd? Dodd? Okay, maybe you didn't know his microphone was on.
Yeah, my bad. I didn't know my microphone was on. I was reading a couple of different emails in different classes as well.
Okay, well, go ahead and mute yourself. So a little bit about what's going on with me. I don't know if I know Tori's been in my class and John's been in my class. Other than that, I don't know that I have met the rest of you guys. So a little bit about me. I started working at Greenville Tech in August of 2002. So that makes it, I think I'm in my 19th year of working at Greenville Tech. I've taught a lot of different classes. I was the department head for the programming department, and then we combined it with the networking department to create the computer technology department. I was the department head of that. Then they moved me to academic program director when Mr. Cluley came on board. And I stepped down from that role about a year or so ago. So now all I do is teach full time, which is what I came to Greenville Tech to do in the first place. I am a self-taught programmer. I have never taken a programming class in my life. I've read a bunch of programming books. I've taught myself Basic, Visual Basic. I didn't really get into those very much. I didn't really get into programming big time until I fell in love with PHP. And I created the PHP class, a totally volunteer project, and taught that class for a number of years, but it's not offered this year for some reason. I haven't figured that part out yet. It's still in our catalog. But PHP is a great language, and I've written a number of production applications using PHP. I've done some Perl programming, certainly HTML, CSS, JavaScript. I'm teaching JavaScript this semester, and also ASP. I don't know a whole lot about ASP other than what we do in that class, because I've kind of focused on PHP. ASP is kind of a Microsoft's take on what PHP does. I tend to gravitate to the open source version. It has more bells and whistles, in my opinion. So like I said, I'm doing the ASP and JavaScript classes this semester. Some of you may be in one of those classes. Live over here in beautiful Taylor, South Carolina. We just moved into a new house. Talk about perfect timing. First time we bought a house in 21, 22 years. We moved in here on March 5th, and then we locked down on March 11th. So I have been home since March 11th, been out maybe 10, 15, no more than 20 times since March of last year. Being very careful with this COVID thing, because both my wife and I are senior citizens. That puts us into the high risk group, and I just don't want to take any chances. And I'm an avid Gamecock fan. For all of you football fans, we won't even discuss this last football season. Other than you Clemson fans, I read something yesterday that was interesting. The Clemson-Ohio State playoff game had about 19 million viewers, which was 1 million viewers more than the championship game Monday night, which I thought that was interesting. So Clemson has higher ratings than Alabama when they're playing Ohio State. I was glad to see Ohio State go down Monday night. Like most Clemson fans, I'm not a very, very big Ohio State fan. I digress. Okay, let's get back to the course. Some assumptions for you guys. I'm assuming at this point you guys have already taken CPT 113 and CPT 257. Those are required. and all of you have placed or taken Math 105 or a higher math. So if you don't fit into those slots there, if you haven't done those, then that's going to be a problem. So let me know if you have not taken CPT 113, CPT 157, and placed in Math 105 or higher. Those are the prereqs. I'm also assuming that everybody that's on board with us is committed to learning Python and learning programming. We're going to start off really, really simple at the beginning here. And this is designed for somebody that has never programmed ever in their life. And we're going to start at the beginning, but we're going to move fast. And we're going to do 14 chapters in our book, about 2/3 of the book. And by the end of the course, we will have moved from transactional programming all the way up to object-oriented programming. And I think you're going to find it's very interesting. This class will take a lot of time. It's going to take more time than some of the other early classes in your program. So plan at least 10 hours a week to work on this course, including our time together on Wednesday mornings. And I'll try my best to make it worth your while to cover what we're doing each week and answer your questions and that kind of thing. So basically, this class is going to be taught using Blackboard and using my website, bosanders.org. You're invited to visit my website and poke around. The part that you should be most interested in is the blog for CPT 168. So Blackboard will be our official grade book, and you'll see there's a ton of things in here. I think we have 33 labs. We've got 14 posts in the forum. We got 14 quizzes. This semester, we're going to have 4 tests, and we have a final exam. So there's a lot of work to be done, and you can track your progress using the grade book in Blackboard, just like in your other classes. If you go to bosanders.org/CPT168, CPT uppercase, you'll get to the blog for the course, and you'll find the slides that we use in class. A lot of students like those. They use them for studying in addition to while we use them in class. Other materials are in there, like the videos of the virtual classes, some links, some other materials that I've come across that may help you learn Python. You'll have direct links there to Geek Glossary and Jobs Board. Those are a couple of projects that I put on the internet that have been on for a number of years now. Just remember, when you get into the copyrighted material in the CPT 168 blog, our shared login is CPT 168 in lowercase, and our shared password is function. And that will make a lot of sense once we get going here in our course, because we will study functions all the way through this whole course. We'll use functions every week. So taking a quick look at the highlights on our syllabus. This course is called Programming Logic and Design, and most of the colleges in the state use CPT 168 to teach Python, just like we are. The course description comes from the state. It's not something I wrote. This course examines problem-solving techniques applied to program design. Topics include a variety of documentation techniques as a means of solution presentation. And I did add one sentence just for the Greenville Tech implementation. Students in this course will learn basic computer programming using the Python language. Our purpose, certainly to learn how to program and how to do object-oriented programming. So I've sent you a couple of emails, and it's posted in Blackboard and on my website, our textbook. Hopefully you have purchased the textbook. It's a really good book. I like it a lot. I don't know if you can see me. I'm holding my copy up here. I don't know what courses you've taken, but we use Murat books and some other courses some of the C# classes and in the relational database classes. Murac's style, I like the style of their books where they have the narration on the left page and the examples on the right page as you turn through each of the chapters. And so they kind of hold your hand all the way through. Tons of coding examples, and I think that's the best way to learn how to program and how to code is to see how the book does it. I will say this, coding is very individual. Every programmer has their own style. There's no one way to do everything. So we are learning the way Murac wants us to learn, which is good. I have no problem with it. And but realize when you look at code from other sources, it might look a little different from time to time. But please get the book immediately if you haven't done so already. Like I said, we are scheduled to cover 14 chapters, and I call these units. We'll get to that in a minute, but there's one chapter per unit. Today, I'm going to review with you the first unit, an introduction to Python programming. We really get into the meat and potatoes next week, but there are 4 labs that you need to do this week. And the first lab is just getting everything set up on your computer so that you can do the course. You'll have to install Python 3 and also set up IDLE, the IDE that we're going to use for our class. And all that is explained in lab 1-0 in the course. So you have that to look forward to. Once you get that going, the rest of it kind of falls in place. Notice the lines under chapter 8 and chapter 13. I did that because that marks the end of a section. So we're going to do section 1 and section 2 in the book, and a little bit in section 3. In the preface to our book, Murac tells us that once you get through chapter 8 or through the first section, you know the basics of Python and you'll be able to write programs. And from that point forward, you will be raising your skill by adding additional skills to the core. So I like that approach. It works well. So a lot of basic programming in chapters 1 through 8, and then we get into more advanced stuff, chapter 9 through 14. So a minute ago, I mentioned units. About 2 years ago, I took a course at Greenville Tech. They make us take courses too, you know. And one of the things I got out of that course was how to better organize your courses in Blackboard. And it actually it kind of clicked with me, made sense, because there's a lot of advantages to dividing your course up into units. So a unit is more than just a chapter. That's the main part of a unit, is the chapter in the book. But it also includes all the labs, all the quizzes, any articles or white papers or additional reading that I want you to do. And I reserve the right to add those during the semester, which I intend to do. There can be, and there can be labs, I may add labs later in the course that are not in the textbook. So there's the use of Unix gives me a bucket each week to put things in. And some teachers call them modules. I call them units. That's the way I was taught. And it works real good. So please go to course content in Blackboard, in our Blackboard class, and review, just kind of look at the way the units are organized. I think you'll find that it'll help you stay on track. Now, in each of those 14 units, there is a unit quiz. And these quizzes include about 20 to 30 questions in them. And don't take the quiz until you've studied the chapter for that unit. And you can take the quiz 3 times, up to 3 times. So everybody in the class should make 100 on the quizzes. Those are going to be very important for you to learn the terminology, learn the concepts, and you need to do the units in order, therefore the chapters in order. And by doing the quizzes after you do each chapter, that's going to reinforce what you have read and help you kind of hone your skills and focus on the important parts of each of those chapters. So please do that. And many test questions come from the quizzes, so that will help you as you prepare for tests as well. Now, each week in each unit, we will have one or more labs. There's only a couple of units that have one big lab right now, but most units have 2, 3, 4 labs in them. There are 4 labs this week, and those labs are due on Sunday. This unit is due on Sunday, so you need to get to work on it right away if you haven't already started. The first lab is, like I said, installing Python and getting idle set up. And the other 3 labs are fairly short. I don't think they'll take you too long to do them. And we'll grade those up probably on Sunday or Monday, well, probably Monday or Tuesday of next week, and see how you're doing getting started on the course. So the labs are critical. If you don't do the labs, you're not going to learn Python. There's no way to learn it without doing the labs. I'm adding a 4th test this semester. So if you go into the class in Blackboard and you look at tests, you're going to see there is no 4th test right now. I did that because we're doing 14 units, and that's too many units to test in 3 tests. So I'm going to spread it out, and there'll be 3 or 4 units on each test. And then we'll have a final exam at the end of the semester that will include all 14 units in the final exam. These tests will have 50 answers in them. I don't know how many questions, but there will be 50 2-point answers in them. And they'll be mostly multiple choice and fill in the blank type questions. There may be some multiple answer or short answer questions. I will provide you with review sheets for each of the tests. The review sheets are word lists. And these word lists or term lists come from the questions that are actually in the chapter, in the unit, and in the test. So that will help you focus on which words you need to be very familiar with, which terms you need to be familiar with, so you can do better on the test. So I think we did pretty good with that last semester. Most test grades are pretty good. I know some of you guys are wondering about test curves, and I will tell you I do curve tests. The way I curve has worked well for 19 years. So like I said, we have 72 students taking the course this semester. So after all 72 students take the test, I will put together a post-mortem on the test. I will tell you what the class average and the course average now this semester, because we have 4 sections, what the course average was on the test, and we'll determine the curve, and I will curve to 80. So everyone in the course is guaranteed a test that will average 80, not an 80 for everybody, but an 80 for the average, for the class average and the course average. So the curves are fairly generous in this class. That will help your grade and keep everybody motivated to stay in the class and keep learning. So that's a good thing. As far as how your grade is calculated in this course, the unit tests count for 30%. The 4 tests equal 30% of your grade. The assignments, which right now are the quizzes, there's no other assignments, that will account for 20% of your overall grade. Your labs will account for 20% of your grade. Those weekly or per unit forum discussions will count 10% of your grade. And the final written exam that we will take the week of April 26th, I think is the Monday, will be there. So one thing I will tell you about the tests and the final exam, you will be able to take those on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. We have 3 days in the test weeks. You will take them. They will be proctored by Honor Lock. I don't know if you had that last semester. Somebody's microphone's on. If you'll check it, please. I can, let's see. Hate to interrupt the flow here, but we'll kind of keep things quiet while we're talking. Let's go back one. But anyway, you have 3 days to take the test, and the same thing on the final exam. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of that last week of the semester, you'll have 3 days to pick a time to take the test. So we give you 72 hours, an open window for the test and the final exam. We're working on a 10-point grading scale here, which is like the other classes in the program at Greenville Tech. One of the things that you have to do this week is download the syllabus and the 2 attachments. We'll talk about attachment 1 some more here in a minute, but I suggest that you download those and keep them on your computer in your folder for this class, and don't delete them anytime soon. You should save all of your syllabi for all of your classes. If you ever transfer to another school, they're going to be very important to you. And when you have discussions with future employers or your current employer about what was included in the courses that you took, having your syllabus to show them is going to be very helpful, especially with attachment 1, which details all the units that we have and what was in each of the units. So I think that's a good thing to do, to save those. Even to the point that on our department website, I set up a page there where we have all of the syllabus for all of the courses back to 2010. So if you're missing any syllabus or syllabi, plural, you can go to that page and download them. But you should keep those. You don't know how long that page is going to be up on the internet. Somebody may come along and make us take it down. Stranger things have happened. So take that syllabus quiz by Sunday, okay? Now, moving on to the department policies part of the syllabus. This is actually attachment number 2 of the syllabus. I'm not going to read all this. I'm just going to point out the important stuff in bold here. And it clearly states in the policy that students can miss 1 test, and the instructor of the class has the authority to deduct up to 20% off of your grade on that test if you make it up. Now, I do not do that. You have a 72-hour window to take a test, so I have not had too many tests missed recently, and that's a good thing. But also notice the very last thing, the last bullet: curves and bonus options will not be allowed on a makeup test. That is very important. So you need to take the tests when they're scheduled in this class as well as other classes so that you can get the curves. The lab policy is pretty straightforward. You can read it in attachment 2, pointing out that no late labs will be accepted. So if you don't get it turned in by Sunday each week, and all of our due dates are Sundays, you'll get a 0 on the lab. And the same thing holds true for the quizzes, which are our assignments. They fall under the assignment policy, which is very similar to the lab policy, but no late submissions will be accepted. Now, I know we're not at school, but I had this in my orientation slides already. So I just want to point out, when you go to school, be sure and have a parking sticker on your car and clearly applied in the bottom left corner of your rear glass in your car or your truck. And when you park in the white parking spaces, the ones with the white paint on them, and pull straight in. Do not back into any parking spaces. If you'll do that, you probably will not get any tickets. I hope you won't get any tickets. Tickets are a pain, and we don't want to deal with them. Stay away from the blue or the green lines in the parking lots. Unless you have a handicap placard hanging on your rear view mirror, you can get in the blue line if you have that. If you work at Greenville Tech, you can get in the green lines, but students have many more parking spaces. You guys get all the white ones. So what does it take to make an A in this class? The formula is real simple. Attend our Wednesday morning sessions. Pay attention, try to absorb what we're talking about. Do the assignments, the quizzes, do the labs. As I've already stated, ask questions. We'll have opportunities for you to ask questions all through the sessions every Wednesday morning. Try real hard to learn the language, learn the words, and I'm constantly working on that myself. Try very hard to learn the difference, like between a function and a method. That is real important. So the little things like that, learn the terminology, and especially when we get into object-oriented, it gets kind of tricky. So study hard on that. It'll help you do better on tests and certainly help you do better on labs, okay? So are there any questions about how this course is put together?
No questions at the moment. Thanks for going through everything.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm just checking my roll here. Is Mr. Edwards here? Has he come in late? I let people in without checking them off because I always can't do but one thing at a time. Mayfield, did you come in? I think those are our two absences at this point. Okay, so does anybody else have a question? Well, y'all are easy.
Not this time.
Okay, let me see. I need to get rid of this. Oops. Probably should have done that. This ought to work. Trying something new here, which always gets me in trouble. So needless to say, my keys are not working right. Okay, that was clumsy. Okay, sorry. So let's go ahead and take a look at my notes on Unit 1. And like most Chapter 1s or Unit 1s in a course, this is an overview. It's just kind of a sample of things to come and some broad stroke things. I don't think you'll find this a real tough unit. So what we're going to do is first talk about why we chose Python. I think this is important. It may help you understand why so many people are taking this course. First off, we did some research, not just myself, but also the department head. And we surveyed our advisory committee. These are people that work in the industry. And we asked them, so we need to update our core programming language, the one that we start everybody with. The state of South Carolina requires that we have a core programming language in our CPT degree. And the verdict was unanimous. All of them that we talked to suggested Python because Python is a fairly easy language to learn. And so it's a good one to as our title of our course, Programming, Logic, and Design. It's good to teach that when the language is not in the way. Okay, so that's why we chose it. And Python is in use by cybersecurity guys. It's in use by network administration guys. Systems administration guys use Python, and certainly programming. Students can use Python for web applications, for console applications, for GUI applications. So Python's all over the place. It even is used to write operating systems. A great portion of Linux is written in Python. Unfortunately, a lot of that is Python 2, and we've moved on to Python 3 now. So whatever computer you're using Python on, and you can use it on a Mac computer, you're going to have to make sure that Python 3 is installed. Some operating systems will include it, others won't. Windows 10 does not include it, so you have to go to Python's website and download it, install it, as we're doing in Lab 1-0 in this class. It doesn't take too long to install it, and it works great. So because Python is used in all aspects of of what we're trying to teach in our program, it makes the perfect language for us to tackle in our core programming class. So the objectives in the first unit, in the first chapter of our book, are to learn 3 reasons why Python's a good first language for beginners to use. And I think they're common sense. I don't think you're going to be terribly surprised by any of that. We're going to be writing mostly console programs in this class. That means that these programs will pop up on the screen in a what most students call a command prompt window. So it's not the real fancy GUI stuff to begin with, or it's not even web apps to begin with. We're going to start with console programs, and once we get those working really good, then moving on to GUI and web apps will be much easier. I think it's important that we learn how Python compiles our source code. When we write a program, we write source code, and then the compiler changes it into bytecode, which is a very fast code that CPUs can understand. And that is fed into the Python virtual machine that actually runs the code and generates the output that you see. In our case, the console program. So we'll take a quick look at that. This chapter also covers some basics that hopefully you already know from other classes about how main memory and disk storage works with programs on your computer, as well as system software and application software. So we'll scoot through that part really, really fast because you should already be familiar with that, especially if you took CPT 113 and CPT 257. Now we get into testing and debugging and the types of error messages that we're going to run into. I think we don't need to assume we know how to do that. We need to learn how to do that using IDLE, the IDE we're going to use in the course, and how to recognize the type of error messages that we're going to see and the type of errors that generate exceptions. So all of that is touched on in this first chapter, but we're going to dig deeper into all of this as we get into future units in the class. So the 3 reasons why why Python is a good first language are the first thing we will tackle here. And the first reason is it's very simple. It's easy to read. It is very much, it follows the English language. In other words, the type of constructs are fairly easy to interpret because we all speak English. We don't have to translate it into another foreign language or something. So that makes it very easy. It has all the traditional functions of any production quality programming language like Java or C#. And so when you learn concepts and skills in Python, they carry forward into other programming languages as well. And I've already mentioned you can use Python to create all kinds of applications, including games, web apps, administration apps. Major companies use Python every day. Google, IBM, Disney, EA Games, those are some that are mentioned in the book. And that is the virtual, very tippy tip top of the iceberg. There are thousands and thousands of companies that use Python. So having this skill in your arsenal is going to be very important. And the other thing that's important about learning Python is it's open source. That means that it is part of a sharing community. And we'll get into that more here in a second. But the fact that we have the ability to communicate with such a large group of people that use Python, it is relatively easy to find answers to questions online. You don't have to even wait on your teacher. So Stack Overflow is your friend. StackOverflow.com if you haven't been using that website. It is my go-to forum for getting questions answered. So other general purpose programs that you probably heard of, C++, Java, C#, those are the types of languages that Python kind of parallels or falls into. They're considered general purpose programming languages. PHP, I was talking about earlier, that is primarily used for web apps. It is a very high level scripting language. And so that is a bit different than Python, although you can write web apps with Python. There's a chapter towards the end of this book that talks about that. The timeline for Python I find interesting. It doesn't even mention Python 1, but as I said, Python 2 is used even in the writing of Linux. That was released in October of 2000. And notice it was the go-to version until December of 2008 when version 3 came out. And I think we're on version 3.9.1 now. Somebody told me that yesterday in class. So I need to update Python on my computer. I think I'm on 3.8.7, which was the current version when we started the fall semester. So you can see by this this image from our textbook that the last release of Python 2 to get support was in 2020. So Python 2 is pretty much locked in, and they're not going to do any more developing on that. Whereas all the developers around the world are working on Python 3 now. And so I find that interesting. It's good to know as much as you can about the language that you're studying when you're going to spend so much time on it. So comparing Java, which we have 2 Java courses in our program, we only have 1 Python right now. To compare the code, we have 2 functions here from Unit 1. And you can see from this code that we're creating a function. Inside the function, we initialize a variable. We create a for loop to run a calculation, and then we return that value back at the bottom of the function. And I counted them yesterday. There are 10 lines of code for Java to do that, including those braces you got to keep up with. Notice in the Python code in the second part of this slide, the bottom part here, does exactly the same thing, does it in 6 lines instead of 10 lines. You multiply that times a huge application, that is a whole lot less code. That is hugely important. One thing I will tell you that's very important in Python is the indentation. Notice the indent after we define this function named calculate future value. The lines of code that are included in that function have to be indented, and that's one of the first things we'll learn next week in when we write our first programs. Indentation, we'll actually get error messages if you don't indent right. The IDE won't let you continue unless you indent right. But so I find that to be very enlightening for the first week discussion of the program. Very important. Python gets the job done with less coding. So the chapter defines a console application versus a GUI and a web application. I think you guys will probably know this. The thing that you probably don't use that much of right now are console applications. And now in business, console applications are not all that rare, but in the general public, not so much. We like our GUIs, we like our web apps, but if you were to write a custom app for your boss at work, it could be a console app, and we're going to get you to the point where you can do that in this course, including maintaining a data file. So I'm excited about that. For an entry-level course, that's a lot of skill. So you can see this is an application that we're going to kind of review and learn a little bit about in this first unit. And it is it calculates the value of an investment in the future. I think it's kind of funny. Most programming books have a program like this that students learn, because it's something that everybody should think about. If I save $100 a month for 5 years and I make so much interest, how much money will I have at the end of 5 years? And that is what this little application does. Here's the same thing in a GUI environment, and here's the same thing in a web application. So you can use most of the same code, whether it's a console, a GUI, or a web. Now, if you move on to GUI and web apps, there's additional code that you have to add that basically adds the bells and whistles for the GUI and for the web. And but other than that, the part we're learning now is going to be the same on all of them. So let's dig into this future value program. We're going to see that there are 3 unknown quantities, 3 variables that we're going to have to collect from the user of the program: the monthly investment amount, the yearly interest amount, and the number of years that the investor wants to calculate for. And then this little application will come up with the answer. One thing that we are going to learn, probably you did not know when you got out of bed this morning, was the first line of your program has to define the interpreter that you're going to use, okay? And that is called the shebang, or the shebang line. I don't know who makes up these names, but that's what it's called. And I actually learned this a long time ago when I learned Bash shell scripting, and then we moved into PHP and other programming languages. They all require you to define at the beginning of the program what the interpreter is. That way you can have different versions of interpreters installed on the same computer. So you will see in our program that the shebang line is going to tell the code, when the code is processed, to use the Python 3 interpreter. So the next 2 slides show us this code for the future value application. And the very first line up here is the shebang line. Now this is written for Windows 10. So you can see the shebang line always starts with a # exclamation point. That is true in Linux or Mac or any of them. They all start with a # exclamation point, no space. And then in this case, the path to the environment. And this is a variable to that environment. We want to run Python 3. So that tells us this is going to be the Python 3 interpreter. The next line imports a module, and we'll have a chapter on modules real soon coming up. This is the locale module. And when you import a module, whether it's a custom module or one that comes with Python 3, you get all of the functions and classes that are included in that module. So that gives you a fast start to developing your code. You don't have to write all that stuff. Somebody's already written it for you. All you have to do is call it, okay? And then we start doing stuff here. And notice this is documented to some extent. Any line that starts with a # is a comment line that tells us what they're doing. So the first thing they're going to do here is set the locale for the use in currency formatting. Different countries have different formats for the currency. And so we're setting a variable here. We want the result to use the set locale function that comes from the locale module. And this is the syntax that we have to send to this function. So we'll learn how to do all that here in a little while. Then we run it into an if statement. If the result equals C, then we want to set the locale to US. That's what's happening here. Then we just have a little display, a welcome display. This is just a print function. And then the print function is null here for a blank line. Then we're setting the value of choice, another variable here, to Y. And we start a while loop. I love while loops. This is very important for console applications, because that keeps that console open and gives the user a chance to run it more than one time. So the choice is defaulting to yes. And we are setting, this is a function to set the case. We want to set it to lowercase to equal y here. And then the next thing here is we're starting to collect information from our users. And you can see input, input, and input. Those are input functions. Those are all built in. So that means prompt the user and collect some value from that user. And we'll learn this syntax here real fast in this class. And this just tells us the data type. These are floats, and that is an integer. And so we're collecting the monthly investment, the yearly interest rate, and the number of years. So now we have all that. We have to start doing some math. The first thing we got to do is convert the yearly values to monthly values. So we got to do some division, divide it by 12 and divide it by 100 again to make it a percent. So we do all that. And then we get into calculation. Now we calculate the future value. We set it to 0, and we have a for loop that is going to go through. This is the values that these are the values that we collected, and we're doing some math here. So the future value plus the monthly investment, and then we are going to multiply it times the monthly interest rate, and then we set the future value plus the monthly interest amount that we calculated. Okay, so we're kind of using future value as a bucket here to collect that value. And then the last part here is to display the output. And so we are printing the future value. These are tabs that set the screen for us. We want to make sure we have it written in the right format. So there's the value, future value, and we're setting the grouping to true. We'll deal with that later. Printing a blank line here, and then there's another input from the user, whether we want to continue and go through the while loop again or not. Then if not, then we shut the program down. So you actually have a lab working on this program. That's why I took a minute or two to go through how it's kind of set up and designed so you can see what's going on. We don't expect you to know all this syntax and all this logic and everything right now. We just want to start getting you thinking about it. And this is very typical of a simple business application that you might write. So don't panic. Just realize that we're going to get there. We're going to get there sooner than later. We're going to move quickly to get there. So when you and I are working on our source code, we're going to use some kind of code editor or IDE. In our case, it's going to be idle. And it just looks like a text editor, actually works like a text editor with some bells and whistles added to it. And we can save those files as PY files. And that's actually what you're going to turn in to me in this course each week. Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time it's going to be a .py file. So I can run it on my computer and see what you did. So your source code will be saved as a .py file. When you compile it by pressing the F5 key in the idle IDE, when you compile it, it goes into the Python interpreter and changed into bytecode. That bytecode, like I said, is a code that your processor can deal with. And that goes through the Python virtual machine that changes it into the code that the operating system can understand. So we don't know when we write this code up here really whether you're going to run it on a Windows 7 machine, a Windows 10 machine, or maybe run it on a Mac machine or a Linux machine. So the virtual machine down here takes care of figuring all that out and sends it to the operating system so you see the output that you want on the screen. So that's very important. Break it down into 3 steps. The text editor or the IDE is where we enter the source code. We save it as a .py file for Python. That's the default de facto extension for source code. Then we send it to be compiled. The interpreter changes it into bytecode. The bytecode goes into the virtual machine, and the virtual machine then formats it for the operating system. So we're going to use all parts of your computer. We're going to use your system software, and we're going to use some application software. We're certainly going to use the CPU and RAM. All that stands to reason, I think. And we're going to use your disk storage to save your files, and to be sure and use the naming conventions that we have described in Blackboard, so all of us are doing the same thing. Your disk storage is basically, in our world, we talk about megabytes and gigabytes. Actually, the truth is we're going to be down to kilobytes, little small files for our class. These programs don't get all that big. So if you're ever wondering, you probably know this already, but how the different types of memory work on your computer, your operating system, your application software, your data files, things like that are going to be processed in your RAM, which is your main menu. And then they're stored when you're not using them on your disk storage. So we constantly have to be thinking as we develop programs, where is it going to be stored and how is it going to be processed? Okay, one of our students just showed up who is late. Okay. So somebody's got their microphone on. If you'll please mute your mic for me. All right. So I think we kind of covered how disk storage and main memory work together, and how our operating system eventually from the Python virtual machine receives the output of our program and processes. I don't think I can really add to any more than what's in the book. So let's move on to the next part, which introduces us to idle. This is very important because we have to have a tool to write our source code in, and we are going to use idle. It comes with Python 3. We don't have to do anything extra other than make sure it's installed in Windows 10. IDE is short for Integrated Development Environment. It is more than just an editor. And but be sure that you have an editor, or excuse me, a IDE that you're very comfortable with. And most of the students last semester when we started this course used idle, but a few chose to use PyCharm. PyCharm is also free. You have to Google it and download it and install it. I cannot support PyCharm. We got enough to do without branching out that far. So, but if you want a kind of a different look, PyCharm is a good option. Another one is Eclipse. We used Eclipse years ago for an Android class we had. Don't have that class anymore. It's a good general purpose IDE. And you will have to add a Python plugin that goes into Eclipse if you want to use that. Another one that's not in the book is NetBeans. I've used that in the PHP class. We use NetBeans for the IDE in that class. And it also will require that you install a Python plugin for it. So those broad, one size fits all type IDEs also have to have a plugin that's specific for the language you want to use. And you can have multiple plugins in them. You're not limited to one language. That's one nice thing about those types of like Eclipse and NetBeans. So, but we're going to be all about idle in this class, and it works. It's available in Mac as well as Windows. It comes when you download and install Python 3. So at the end of the day, once we get this set up on your computer, and this is the very first lab in the course, is to get it set up on your computer. When you launch Python, if you don't open up a PY file and you are basically just getting to the interactive shell and you want to start typing, just realize, and this is very important, when you type something in and press the enter key, the interactive shell of idle is going to process that as if it were a line of code. So if it's a good line of code, it's going to generate some good output. If it's a bad line of code, you're going to get an error message. And you're going to get a lot of error messages in this class. That is not a problem. We learn by making mistakes in this type of work. So just realize every time you type something in, you press the enter key, it's going to process it as if it were code and wants to see what it will do. So this is what the screen looks like for idle. And first thing you should notice is that everything is color coded. I like that. And notice that you have 3 right errors or greater than symbols for the prompt. So we start our work here and we just entered this print function. And notice we got it well structured here. You'll learn that in the class. We press the enter key and the output comes without any errors. Here's a math calculation, 8 plus 5, press enter, it calculates. 10 divided by 3, it calculates. Using parens, we did addition and then multiplied, that calculates. We got a problem here in this line of code. We're trying to run the print function again, but whoever entered this forgot the double quotes, the quotation marks. And so we got a syntax error. And just, it doesn't tell you a whole lot, just a syntax error is going to say it's invalid syntax. It does try to highlight something that will tell you what's going on. So we did some more math here. And this time we are entering a value for a variable, x equal 5. There's no output when you do that. It just happens. Okay. And then in the next line, x plus 10. Well, now we have the value of x in memory, so we come up with 15. So that sounds cool. Let's add 15 to x. And notice now we've got a runtime error. This is a good example of a runtime error, and it's because we used a capital X here instead of a lowercase x. So lesson learned here, and I'm going to go real slow. Python is case sensitive. Just assume anything is case sensitive unless somebody tells you differently. So an uppercase X and a lowercase x are 2 different things. So that is what we have learned here. So navigating through idle is fairly straight up. I think the way you learn this best is using it. You're going to make some mistakes and that's okay. And then you'll move on. But like most editors, you can save your file, you can open a file, you close a file. To run Python, you can run from the menu. I just press the F5 key. It's a lot easier to compile pressing the F5 key. Idle uses the same control plus a letter combinations that Windows uses: Control X, Control C, Control V, Control Z, Control Del, Control Backspace. Those things all work in idle. So that means we don't have to learn new shortcuts. The old shortcuts we've been using still work. Idle uses drop-down menus. So get familiar with those menus, just like any new program that you might install on your computer. Go through all the menus and see if you can figure out what each one does. You're not going to use them all in this class, and you don't have to know everything perfect, but start getting familiar. So moving on here, save as to save your file as the PY file. And remember, you got to save as the PY file to submit to me. You're going to do that at least 30 times in this class. So don't let that sneak up on you. In some of our labs, you will also include a data file. So we'll talk about that when we get to it. In these early labs, there are a couple of labs where you're going to do snippets of your screen. And then I think there's one lab in Unit 1 where you actually upload your PY file. I actually had a student send me an email from yesterday's class, and he didn't read the instructions. Told me that the future value program's not working in lab 1-3, and that is true because he hasn't fixed it yet. You have to follow the directions in the book, and it will show you how to fix it, and that's how we learn to program. And it happens to be the program that's on the screen right now. This is how the future value program will look in idle. So I think between the color coding and another thing I like a whole lot is down here in the bottom right corner, tells you the line and column number where your cursor is. That is huge, especially if I need to tell you, if I'm looking at your code and I say, look at line 47 about column 62, you know, I can point you right to where a problem is if there's something I want you to look at. So that's important. So get familiar with these menus at the top here. Run's important, format, edit, file, those are important. Options, I don't remember doing a whole lot in options. Window we do a little bit. Help is always good, but get familiar with those as we said. So the F5 key, there's actually a test question on this and nobody's ever missed it. F5 key is your friend. When you run an idle, that will compile your program. Now, understand this. When the compiler starts going through your source code to create the bytecode, when it hits something that has a syntax error, boom, it stops and it will throw an error in idle. It'll show you there's a syntax error, there's a problem. You'll have to go in and back into the interactive shell and change that code, fix that problem, press F5 again, and hopefully it'll go all the way through and run. But it might go to error number 2 and you got to fix that error. Then you press F5 again, it'll go on through, it'll hit error number 3. So just realize it goes to the first error it sees and stops. You fix that error, you recode it, then you press F5, go down to the next error known until you get it to compile. Now that does not mean that your program is 100% correct. It means it compiled. That's all it means. Okay, that's a good indication that you don't have any syntax errors. But lo and behold, you could have runtime errors, which will happen when you actually use the program. So if we do this right and we run, we opened up the py file here, futurevalue.py in the interactive shell, and we press the F5 key, then another window will pop open and it will be the console app that you just ran, okay? And so here you have it, and you can see that it ran and it looks like it's running correctly. Somebody has entered some code here and there were no runtime errors. So that is why it's so important to test, because you've got to put in good data and you've got to put in bad data. You got to try to break your programs. You got to be the village idiot and see, okay, if I don't read the directions and I'm just awful, what if I put letters in instead of numbers, what happens? That's how we validate, we check our programs to make sure they will survive in the marketplace, in the real world. So just because it compiles, it does not mean that it's totally done, okay? So those things are important to think about. So you can click on the run option in the top menu or press the F5 key to start the compiler, okay? Test the program, kind of covered that. We're first testing for syntax errors, and then we're going to be looking at runtime errors. Syntax errors are normally typos. The thing that bothers most people is when you leave something out and it's not on the screen, how do you know to fix it? And you just learn, like those double quotes that we're missing. You have to quote strings to protect the strings, and the compiler wants them protected. So that would be a syntax error. Then there's the runtime errors. Runtime errors throw exceptions. These are things that cause your program to quit running when you expect it to run. And we will learn a lot about exceptions in Chapter 8, because one of our challenges as Python programmers and developers is to handle exceptions. It is possible for us to, by handling exception, tell the user, okay, you were not supposed to use letters there, you were supposed to use numbers, or whatever the case may be. Or it has to be uppercase instead of lowercase, although we can fix that in the code. Sometimes we can fix stuff in the code that the user does, and sometimes the user has to fix it. So we deal with all that by handling exceptions, and that's a real interesting chapter, Chapter 8 at the end of Section 1. I already told you that idle catches one error at a time, which is okay with me. Just remember, you have to fix one error at a time, top to bottom. If you get a syntax error, it's going to look something like this. And if you get a runtime error, it's going to look like this. Runtime errors, also called exceptions, are going to give you a little bit more information, okay? And they will try to point you to where you need to look. They give you a line number, which is very important, line where the problem happened, and that will help you. So I think we're pretty much on time. We were supposed to go to about 11 o'clock. Our classes run roughly an hour and a half, okay? This one's going to come up just a minute or two less than that. So an hour and a half would be 5 minutes after 11 o'clock for this particular class. I will tell you there are certain units that run longer. Unit 4 coming up, and I'll remind you, Unit 4, I'm going to need a little more of your time. So it'll run past 11 o'clock. And when we get to that one, I will remind you, you can certainly watch the video if you have to leave after an hour and a half. You can look at the last part of the class on the video on my website. So at the end of each chapter in our book, there is a term list, okay? And I will call your attention to this in each of our units, because we have to learn the words. We have to learn the terms. Now, you're going to know a bunch of these, but like Python, okay, yes, programming language. You need to know more than just what Python is, as we discussed in this chapter. So the term list here, just like the review sheets that you have for the tests, we're going to tell you, you need to know these things inside and out. So a lot of these you're going to already know, okay? And that's good. But there are things we talked about, the shebang line over here. Well, that's on the term list. That's going to be probably in a review question. It's probably going to be in a quiz question. It may even be in a test question. And now you know what a shebang line is. You've been introduced to that. Idle, you might not have known what idle is, and we're starting to learn that. So that's on the term list. Use these term lists. Carrying it one step further, and this is why I like the Murat books. There's so many neat things about it. There's a good detailed summary at the end of each chapter. And some chapters are long and some chapters are short. This one has a fairly long summary because it's the first chapter. And so it goes into a good bit of detail. So think of this as the cliff notes for the chapter. And you need to go through these summaries more than once. I would use these summaries as kind of a quick review over and over. Remember, repetition helps you learn. Students ask me all the time, I'm not getting this, what should I do? Drill, 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 and go through the terms and go through the summaries and use flashcards or whatever system works for you. Take notes, outline the chapter, do those kinds of things, but certainly use the summary at the end of the chapter. These will help you understand the key points in each of those chapters. So that brings us to the end of Unit 1, and there's some things that you need to do this week. This is all due by Sunday. So on a weekly basis, because this is a Wednesday class, I highly suggest that you start working on the deliverables for each of the units before we have class on Wednesday. I'm not going to change much on Wednesday. I promise you, you're not going to waste time by getting started early. So just remember our due date, because we have 4 sections of this course. All sections are due on Sunday night at 11:59. Now this one, most of this is pretty easy and will go fairly fast for you, but you're still going to have to spend maybe 4 or 5 hours getting all this done. You need to post your introduction to the discussion forum. That's gradable. Download the syllabus and the attachments, read them, understand them, and then post the syllabus quiz, okay? Do the syllabus quiz, do it over and over until you make 100 on it. It's required for you to stay in the class that you make 100 on the syllabus quiz. So on Sunday night, Monday, when I look at these, the first thing I'm gonna do is go to the syllabus quiz and make sure you did it. Read and study chapter 1. We just kind of reviewed it for you. You can download these slides off of my website. You can also download this class off of my website and use it as a review tool. Complete and submit the topic 1 in the discussion forum. That's not the same thing as the introduction. There is actually a topic question, and you should write a response to that in the forum, and you need to reply to 3 of your classmates on their responses. And you will not see the other students in the class until you post yours. So you can't copy theirs, okay? So you're gonna have to come up with your unique answer, and then you can look at some of their answers and post a comment. To get 100 on those forum posts, those forum topics, you're going to have your response as well as a reply to 3 of your classmates. And you got 20 classmates or 19 other students in the class. That should be no problem. Be sure and submit the 4 labs, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 3 for this course, for this unit, and do the Unit 1 quiz, which you can take up to 3 times and make 100 on that. So that is what we have in store. Are there any questions? Since I have a few more minutes of your time, I'm gonna look at one other thing. Do I have this queued up? Thought I did. There it is. Okay, let's look at this. Okay, so yeah, we'll just look at it this way. This is attachment 1 on the syllabus quiz. And I spend a lot of time putting together these attachments for my courses. This one is real important because it's for 4 classes, but my contact information, including my cell phone, is on here. And so you always can find me, okay? And also the email address is up here somewhere. And there's my schedule for the semester, if you care about that. A note here about the unit tests will be on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday during test weeks. They're going to be proctored by HonorLock. And all of the attendance assignments, this is a hybrid class, so you get attendance for today. You also have an attendance assignment for this week. So things, there could be 1 or there could be 2 things that have an A in a week that need to be done to get the second attendance for the week. Here's the class schedule. And so Unit 1, here's the list of things that you have to do. I designed this attachment as a checklist, so you can just check them off. I'd print this thing out and keep it with your course papers, okay? And everything's due on Sundays, okay? Monday's a holiday. It won't affect this class too much. Next week, we'll get into how to write your first program, and pretty much the same process. Read and study the chapter, do the forum post, do the labs, do the quiz, get it all in by the next Sunday. So you can work ahead on this. So you don't have to wait till Wednesday to do this, is all I'm saying, okay? So be sure and use attachment 1. That's something that will be helpful to you. So I've done all the talking here. Before we adjourn, does anybody have a question that I could help you with?
Sure, just have one quick question. I was wondering if something comes up like a doctor's appointment, can we attend one of your other section classes?
Yeah, I need to know in advance. Okay.
Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, because that'll mess up my role. But I fully expected that question to come, and you're the first person to ask it. Nobody asked that yesterday. I would like that to be the exception to the rule because of just the paperwork involved, the bookkeeping involved. But yeah, if you have a work conflict or a doctor's appointment or something, I'll certainly work with you, let you attend another class. We have a morning class, an afternoon class, and a night class. So we can get you in there.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good question. Anybody else got a question? So are you excited? Is this something you want to learn? Does it sound something like something you could get interested in if you're not already?
Oh, yes,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
I'm already hooked.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, this is something that you can use. And to me, my opinion, when we get to, and this probably well in maybe halfway in the course, we get to using data files. That's where you can really start writing a program that does something. So you can, collect names and addresses and phone numbers or grades or, whatever. You can start dealing with data. And it certainly adds a layer of complexity to your programming, but it makes your programs a whole lot more meaningful. And I hope you guys will enjoy that part. That's the part I like. Okay, well, let's go ahead and adjourn for today. We'll meet again next week. One thing I want to reinforce here, we have 20 students in this class. So when you log in next week, be sure that your first name and last name show up on the screen so that I can check you off and we don't have to waste a ton of time on that. I will be here 15 minutes before class starts, so try to get here before 9:35 if at all possible. And some of you guys jumped in and out of class today. I hope that doesn't continue. That it can't be helpful to you when you're trying to follow along with the instructor and you're jumping in and out. So try to stay online. Maybe your telephone's not the best thing to use. Maybe you should be in front of a computer for class time. I don't know. That's certainly up to you. But just remember to put your name on the screen so we can get that part taken care of. And yeah, I will. Somebody, Logan posted, are you going to email us the next Zoom link? There's two things. This is interesting. That's a really good question, Logan. There's two ways you can deal with this. I email you every week on Sunday or Monday, and I will tell you what you got to do for that week. I will give you the Zoom link. I will try to keep you focused. Okay. That's one thing. Because the college is paying for us to have a Zoom account now, if you go into course tools, in the bottom right-hand corner, the very last thing it says Zoom meeting. And that is a little tool that they added to Blackboard, which I'm learning. I just saw it last week for the first time, but it should have the link to the class in there as well. So you got two ways you can find it. So that's a good question. Yeah, I will send you that every week. Let me see. Are there any other questions? Did I answer everybody's question in the chat? I'm trying to watch the chat on my second monitor here. And some guy's kid threw up going to school this morning. I'm sorry. I hope it wasn't too messy. God, gross me out. Just kidding. I don't have kids. Sorry. I have a cat that throws up every day. Appreciate you telling me why you were late. I shouldn't be making fun of that, I guess. Okay, it looks like I got to everybody that's in the chat. But what I was going to say, in my infinite wisdom, I got this all set up so that the chat's perfectly behind my microphone, so I have to bend in so I can see it. Oh, well. My project during the break at Christmas was to add a second monitor and add the boom arm for the mic, and I put in the camera arm and all that stuff. It was a fun project, but I'm still getting used to how to use it all. Thank you so much for being in class today, and I look forward to being back with you next Wednesday. Have a great week, and if you have any questions, send me an email, okay? So long, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Have a good week.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Thank you.